Well, good morning. It's nice to see you all. As I said before in this presentation, I would like to talk to you about we did in this past June 15 in City Science Biobío event. This event was held to celebrate the fourth anniversary of the City Lab Biobío in Chile, marking the close of the 4 years of collaboration with the regional government of Biobío and the Chilean Chamber of Construction. While also this opening the door to us to expand towards the rest of Chile's regions and cities. That's our expectation. And this event was very important because we were able to present all the technical and technological developments we worked on over the past 4 years. And at the same time, we were joined by Naroa, who was also with us giving a talk about on mobility and her doctoral research at MIT. So thank you so much, Naroa, for joining us. And one of the key features of this event was the presentation of 7 technological platforms, some of which you are already familiar with, but I want to tell you a little bit about this. The first platform we presented was the city scope. At all, we first developed in the Costanera neighborhood of Concepcion. This was our first research project, and we worked together to analyze the impact that a set of public projects planned for this neighborhood would have, as well as to understand the community's concerns, the expectations, the hopes and dreams regarding all these housing, infrastructure, transportation, and public space projects planned for the area. I'm gonna be very brief with this presentation of the tools. Then we will present you together with Manuel and Manuel and Francisco some details about this. En Ciudad Portuaria, we present our port city platform, which you also saw last year at the summit in Concepcion, and aim at working on a port city, which is Talcahuano, analyze the impact that future infrastructure projects would have along with their direction with the system of activities, pedestrians, and the people who live daily in a city as Talcahuano. And this platform is currently implemented for the port company, and we are right now planning to continue developing it, for which it would be very interesting to connect with any one of the network who has experience in conducting research in port cities. So we will talk with you soon. And traffic, we also present our traffic and accident platform for the entire national territory, which was originally launched a couple of years ago for a specific municipality in Biobío. And right now, using waste data, it allows citizens to look not only online data, but also historical information on congestion and accidents on all routes in all cities in Chile from north to south, which has been very useful for developing different studies on events that occur in the city and generate changes in transportation dynamics. And we also present the wildfire viewer. Manuel is going to be talking about this. The wildfire viewer is a tool we have shown before with the network in previous conversation on natural disasters. It was a collaborative effort carried out in January of this year together with Deep Hub and Imagine IT, aim at providing information so that citizens and authorities could better manage this emergency. And well, as I said, Manuel will be present and explain a bit more about the technical and methodological aspect of this research. And then we have the metropolitan scope, Biobío, and the data scope. Over the past few months, we have been working on the creation of this tool. Metropolitan and Datascope are platforms that make geographic databases available to the public, which I will also be presenting shortly. And then community scope focus on the Concepcion metropolitan area. Francisco Bot will be presenting this later on. This is very interesting because through the use of AI and generative imagery, these platforms allows us to work with focus groups to participate in thinking about and imagining new ways to plan our neighborhoods. So this is community data, metropolitan scope are new tools, and we are very excited to show this and share this with you. Well, I will start with this project, Data Metropolitan. Well, Datascope, and you can visit this website, Datascope, citylabiobio.cl. It's a platform that emerged from the need to make available all the information we have created at the lab, as well as information we have gathered from different sources, mainly public ones, and to present it to the community through geographic databases. And the goal is help people, especially in academia and technical fields, make use of this information, this data for their works or projects. Currently, we have more than 1,000 datasets published in different dimensions: urbanism, community, mobility, housing, planning, infrastructure. And one of the interesting sections is the statistic area. Here you can see the datasets that we have published, and we have the statistics section. And you can see information, and you can look up information by dimension, geographic scope, source, year of update, and so on. So this is since this is a recent tool, we welcome you to explore it and send us your questions or comments or suggestions for improvement. And the goal of creating this Datascope repository was not only to allow people to query databases, but also it was interesting because you can display them geographically, as you can see in this picture, generate participatory sessions, hold meetings with communities, and discuss what happened in neighborhoods and city with this information. And this was presented at the June event. This is a picture from that event, and we were able to show different layers of information. For example, we show how the urban area of Concepcion, as you can see, has grown from the 20s to the present days. And we also cross-reference this with mobility data. This is data as trips originating from Concepcion to the rest of the surrounding municipalities. And we also show what was happening with public transportation accessibility. And you can see an indicator obtained from the public transportation tool developed by Naroa's team. And in addition, you can see data such as traffic accidents and their concentration as well as census information such as the concentration of older people. We have here is the older people and their accessibility to different amenities. For example, train station, health centers, bus stops, and green spaces. So there's a lot of information that we make available and that connects with these databases in order to facilitate conversations around cities. And well, that's the thing I want to share with you related to the data scope and metropolitan scope. And I'm going to stop sharing this because right now I want to leave you with Manuel Perez Carrasco. Sorry. So he can show you the work we have done with the wildfire viewer. So Manuel, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me also. Let me know, please, if you can see my screen correctly.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, my name is Manuel Perez Carrasco. I am CTO of Deep Hub. I am also a student at the Harvard Center for Astrophysics. And as you may know, in January of this year, the Biobío region was affected by a wildfire outbreak, and with a wonderful collaboration and partnership with the City Lab Biobío and Imagine IT, along with DeepHub, we took action against this wildfire, and together we designed a platform to track the wildfire in real time. And we did a lot of different things. We developed a lot of different tools, and we are still developing more tools. So my idea here is to just show you and tell you the story and show you some of the tools we have built. Um, so this talk is composed by three parts. The first part is the platform we developed, and the subsequent projects we were making. The first thing when we deal with the disaster was to create a platform to respond. Then we create a system to quantify the damage caused by the wildfire, and now currently we are understanding the environmental impact caused by the wildfire. So here is Concepcion, where this yellow star is. This is where City Lab is, the Bio City Lab is, and where I came from. This red mark here is the extent of the wildfire. It comprises more than 45 hectares of forest, and it was very close to the city, about 90 kilometers, where hundreds of thousands of people live. And Biobío region is particular because it's full of eucalyptus and pinus plantation. So when it burns super fast. Okay, this is an important detail. The first problem was a little bit simple. We wanted to track where the wildfire was spreading, which was the extent of the wildfire, and for that we needed to task a high resolution satellite overpass. So for that we started using the NASA satellites Beers and Modis, which give us fire radiative power, the amount of heat that is coming from the Earth, to map this whole area. Using that data, we generate a proxy to task and schedule this satellite overpass. We Here you can see how these kind of points look. So here you can see the wildfire outbreak days, and you can see there are a lot of different points coming from there. This is the amount of heat that is coming from the ground. Okay. So when we did that, we discovered that some of the firefighters that were in the region didn't know exactly how was the fire extent, and the NASA satellite data was a little bit hard for them to query and interpret. So we did something very simple, which was making this platform available for everyone. And the satellite was updated every time an overpass of some of these constellations passed through Biobío region. Uh, Something that we did not expect was this when viral people, journalists, and local officials share it because they were able to see the fire spreading, and this was very novel. No one was done this before in the region. This is mostly because the rest of this talk exists. So along with Citlab Bio Bio, we turned this tool into a more sophisticated tool, we discovered that we don't not only want to track the wildfire, but we wanted to ask where the shelter were, where the food is, where what the streets are closest. So we added everything into one screen that was able to monitor the wildfire and how the city was what the city was doing against this wildfire in real time. Um, well, no, everything existed. No one of these things was really novel, but it was the first time we were able to see everything in a single platform, and the people was able to use this information for taking action in the zone real time. Um, Then, as I mentioned before, this problem started because we wanted to query high-resolution satellite images, and we used those high-resolution satellite images we tasked at day one in order to build a platform to measure the damage automatically. So we developed an artificial intelligence model that was able to detect the roofs of the houses, and as you can see here, there are a lot of different houses. This is only a small part of Lirken, which was one of the most affected zones here. And with this algorithm, we were able to automatically track the amount of damage by comparing how many roofs we were able to find in the first image and how many roofs we were able to find in the second image. With that, we were able to estimate that approximately 158 buildings in this small region were burned, which was something about $4.5 million dollars in losses in just a small village in Lirken. Um, Also, this story is continue. What we are trying to understand now is how the environment was affected by these wildfires. So, in my work at the Harvard Center for Astrophysics, we are using satellite. In this case, we are using Trupomi, another kind of satellite that measure the air quality. And we wanted to watch the smoke. We wanted to understand what how much the air was impacted by this wildfire and which was the extent of this impact. Yeah, which was the extent. So we did two things. One of them was to measure how dense this smoke plume was. So quantify the amount of pollutant this smoke plume carried out to the environment. Um, so in this case, we measure the carbon monoxide emissions directly from the plume. We applied a method where using the wind speed along with a long track transects within the plume, we were able to measure the amount of carbon monoxide being released. We estimated this as approximately more than a ton per second, which is a lot for a wildfire. We position this wildfire into the upper tail of the distribution of wildfires across the world. And also we measured the amount of nitrogen oxides this wildfire released. We estimated this as approximately 8 kilograms per second, which also positioned this wildfire into a unique place in the and in the top part of the distribution of wildfires. So this was a very impact outbreak. Also, and ultimately, we wanted to use this information for generating simulations on how this smoke plume was transport across across America, across the southern hemisphere. So what we found was a consistent and very dense plume transporting more than 2,000 kilometers northeast over the Pacific, all the way to the tropics in approximately for 4 days until full dilution. So one of the main things that I want to emphasize here is this is not a local disaster. I mean the wildfire is a local disaster, but the environmental impact and the smoke plume is not. It is indeed something bigger than that. So some things to remember from this talk and also to take into account from what I show you is first the fast response to this kind of disaster, to this wildfire. In that setting, the technology is not a problem. The partnership is a problem. I show you how, along with CityLab Biobío and Imagine IT, we develop a great partnership, and each of us was able to support these efforts, and we create this platform in less than a week, working very close together. um, so what we need for tackling this kind of disaster is more coordination than new technology. Second, the decision of task this satellite overpass at day once was one of the best decisions we took. We asked the overpass from day one, and those photos were very useful to quantify damages in order of minutes. After that, after some few days, and this was very useful to quantify the impact of this wildfire in the city. And also, the wildfire is not only local, the smoke reaches to the tropic more than 2,000 kilometers away. This event lasts 4 days. We were able to measure this from Chile for the first time in the history. So also for the future work, we are also looking where to deploy and evaluate the capabilities we develop in this with our platform. And we also want to extend our platform to prevention, which I think is one of the most useful thing. How can we analyze patterns for risk mitigation and to model this disaster? So I'll leave some moments for question. I don't know what is the dynamic, Marcel. If
Yeah,
minutes for question
yeah.
or
Thank you, Manuel. We will continue with the Francisco presentation, where he will talk about the work done with the community too, and then we can receive questions and have a conversation. Thank you,
awesome.
Manuel.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, Marcel. I'm going to take from there. Are you looking okay, the presentation?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so thank you. I'm going to present you Community Scope. This is another project from the City Lab Biobío. It basically researches or tries to discuss about the possible relation between citizen participation and components of artificial intelligence. The design of a software that is intended to guide what we could say like traditional citizen participation workshops, but improved or that work with some sort of components of artificial intelligence. We're going to show you a short video. It lasts four minutes. From that is a summary of the experience of this workshop, which um, tends to last some sort of 45 minutes. It should have a between 10 and 25 participants, more or less, in experience of urban design or public realm design. But just before that, I'll show you 3 or 4 ideas that are in the idea behind the development of this software. So just to start, today it's like unthinkable any sort of urban design, public project, or public realm project without spaces of part, public participation, civic participation. There are a lot of reasons why to have them. Some of them are listed there in the slide. But for this to happen, to incorporate local knowledge, to generate future sense of ownership with public spaces, or to build social capital. What we have learned from experience all around the world, in this case in Chile, these are some pictures that we have done in different workshops around Chile in my own practice in the last 10 or 15 years, is that most of the benefits of citizen participation comes from dialogue, conversation among communities, collaborative learning, and at the end of this community engagement. At the other hand, we have emerging artificial intelligence with a lot of very amazing components. One of these, it is generative images. For almost anybody today, it is possible to develop images with almost any platform. This in the field of architecture and urban design, it's really transforming design process. So there was the question how these two areas could dialogue or integrate in a positive way. So making some research on how this is overgoing, we find out that there were some experiences, but generally, what we could say we thought was some sort of weakness is that they are very image centered, very well depending on the images that are produced, and also very individually centered, very based on working in an individual form with your own computers or cell phones, etc. So we wanted to try to integrate a little bit more what has been learned from all these years of like traditional processes, and with the sum of artificial intelligence components. So although this is a software design, we thought first a little bit about the place, and some ideas we had was to make a room designed for this, or more than designed, with criteria for this, which proposed people to sit around each other, to look at them, to facilitate conversation and dialogue, have a big screen. So even though people are going to be working with their cell phones, also have a look at a share screen, and with a moderator that is able to watch what is happening and to assure that everybody is participating in that sense. And the platform itself, as I said, this is an experience that should last some 45 minutes, in which people will develop, hopefully collaboratively, a proposal for public discussion. So it has nearly 10, 11 stages, in which the idea is that in some of these parts are the software will generate results, images, and other issues, but at the same time, the platform is allowing people to discuss and talk with each other. So it starts with an introduction video, then people select a site where they're going to work. In that place, they make a participatory diagnosis, which then they vote, and they select what are the most important things they see. Through there, they go to think about improvement ideas. They also vote to choose what are the most common and valued ideas. Then the software will build from that a prompt, and from there it will propose 3 improvement scenarios, which then again the group will analyze and discuss. They will choose one. They will see what could be improved over that chosen scenario, and as a result of that, again, the software will propose a final improvement project. Together with the image, it also comes with a technical sheet that generates some indicators, and that's a little bit about what the process is about. Two final ideas, and then we go to this video. One was that together with trying to allow spaces for conversation and dialogue, we also designed the software so that together with the image, it would also generate intuitive urban indicators that will try to explain what each of these proposals are undergoing. So economic, social, and environmental indicators that show the difference and propose the group to see not just the beauty of the image, but also what are the performance behind each of these proposals. And finally, also the software registers all the proposals that we hope communities start undertaking. So we can create an urban idea bank that allows the City Lab to research different patterns, common elements, or difference among citizens' ideas. But it also could allow, for example, to work with local authority to watch what are the trends in these proposals or to identify interesting ideas developed by communities. So I'm going to go through the video, and with that, I'll end up my presentation. So this is what people will watch in the big screen. They will connect with the cell phones. Collectively, they would choose an area to work with. From street map, they would see one public realm or public space to work with. Then there is a space for people to discuss, to work, to say what are the things they like. They write them in the cell phones. They appear on the main screen, and they start also voting for these ideas. So once they see them on the screen and discuss, the software makes an exercise to integrate the ideas. Then they are received back in their cell phones, and the group will start voting them. This was an experience done just with 2 or 3 people, but the idea is that 10, 15, or 20 people work here. From the most voted ideas, then the software will build a prompt, and this prompt is transformed, as I said before, in 3 scenarios. Here it is developing these scenarios, and once it generates them, it shows the image to the group. But as you can see on the right of your screen, it also shows urban indicators that are behind each of these ideas. So you can watch all the 3 scenarios together and compare them, or by each other. And then so the group will start discussing what is their preferred scenario. They will vote for one. And after choosing one of these scenarios, again, they will have a time to discuss about what things could be improved of this scenario. For example, here it was chosen the 3rd scenario. And over this, the group will start discussing again what could be improved. So I think there was proposed to take the cables off, to put a coffee shop in the public space, some games for children, or some place for the elderly. And then again, from these proposals, the software will integrate these ideas, propose a last votation, election for the group, and it will work out a last proposal. This last proposal again comes out with urban indicators, so you can have the last image of the proposal, but also indicators that describe this proposal. And finally, once the image is done, 2 more things that I already described is that it will show to the community at the end the bank of ideas that all the community, in this case in Concepcion, are building together. So a map where you can see other initiatives. You can see also before the project and after the project. But from here it goes to this bank of ideas that I am describing. and this can be studied by City Lab Biobío to understand different trends or to highlight good ideas developed by community. And now finally, it will build up a technical sheet that will be sent to everybody who participates in the experience. And in this technical sheet, there is the image of the proposed improvement area, but also a little story about how many people participated, what was the diagnosis of the place, what were the ideas to develop the place, and what are some urban indicators that describe the improvements that were overtaken. So that is about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you all for your attention. We are waiting for your comments or questions. Oh, a lot. We can start with, I don't know, with Naroa?
Well, if no one has a question, I can start maybe. So
Okay.
well, I have some question, but maybe we can start with what Francisco just presented. So about this tool, did you use it somewhere, or are you planning to use it um, in some locations or with some communities?
Yes, well, maybe Marcel also can comment on this, but the idea obviously is to create spaces in Concepcion City with children from school, with local actors and different groups of people in order to start using it. It's more than a closed software, which we know it works well, more like something to learn from and to observe people, how they interact with it, to take notes, how it is working, what things that we know from traditional workshops probably are being lost and maybe some other things are gained. So it is really more about the design of a software that we hope will let us research and learn how to keep integrating these components to citizen participation.
Mhm.
More specifically, we will implement this tool this week with the municipality of Concepcion in a focus group with children. Today we will have a meeting with the people from the municipality in the specific the specific use of this tool will be for a local plan, the community developing plan. So we are very excited because this will be our first real use of the tool for an important plan in Concepcion.
Mhm. Nice.
Yeah, I do. Everybody, okay, hang on. We're getting our audio right here. First of all, great work. I love seeing the wildfire project. I mean, taking this complex information and making it accessible. I mean, that's very powerful. I've got a question about the community scope. We've found that sometimes communities, people who are not skilled at urban design or thinking about urban metrics, have a hard time dealing with a blank piece of paper. You know, where you have to imagine something that doesn't exist. And so we found that it's often best when the top down meets the bottom up, and when there are, maybe more professionally developed proposals that people can react to. So they use that as a starting point. Sometimes that's a lot easier to get rich information about the preferences of people and their priorities than just asking them to start with a blank slate. I wonder if you could comment on the possibility of this top down meets bottom up in this community process.
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I guess that with the having to use this platform, what is intended is to observe and see, and I would have a better answer a couple of months later, checking what is going on. But what we thought about it when we discussed this is that we started with that's the idea, to start with a diagnosis in which first people just look at the place and they discuss what they like about this place. They register this. They then discuss what they don't like about this place. And so there is a first discussion about the place before setting any ideas. And then there's a second stage where people will start talking about then ideas. So we hope to have in this experience like a progressive way to go to proposal development. The other thing that we thought that it was important is to have a human moderator, that in this case should be probably some sort of expert in urban design, in order to also discuss and filter the ideas that people start talking about, so it can be work through some, as you said, top-down also experience that dialogues with this community discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense to start with people's reaction to the existing place and their ideas. A story I've often told was, I once saw Charles Moore, well-known architect, particularly in the 70s, on a television program. People would call in ideas for a public plaza in this case, and he would sketch live on the on the TV with his pen, and it was duplicating. I mean, maybe AI can duplicate some of that, but in that case, you had a very skilled designer sort of mediating the process, and that was very helpful, because quite often the ideas that would be called in were kind of half-baked, and some of them not very workable, but there was the sort of the germ of the idea that he would then run with and turn it into something that was useful. So I look forward to seeing the results of your experiments.
I was able to see both of the tools in action when we were in Biobío, and that was very nice. I think especially seeing in large scale the creation process in a very big screen worked very well, because it almost had the one-to-one ratio with the street. So that was a lot of fun. But having seen it work kind of with not professionals necessarily in the field that were at the event, but somehow connected to this idea of cities, I'm very curious to see what happens with the same tool with children. I'm wondering if maybe now you have optimized it in a way that it seems very controlled, the changes look very realistic, and I think that's what works well for adults. I'm wondering if now they'll see, they'll imagine something very different from what the reality is, and maybe now the tool doesn't deliver their full vision or something. So seeing kind of that very different use case, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely. Well, the platform will work with more creative ideas like probably children will have. We were going to see what happens with the indicators that the platform also delivers when it works in this way. But no, definitely it is a software more thought to research how it works and how we might integrate this to dimensions like traditional participatory workshops with AI. And there is this question of how to coordinate and to go through the group ideas. I mean, it's going to be interesting to know how it starts working, but it is impossible to know it really without having this exercise.
Well, Marcus has a question, but I have a question as well, but it's more related to the wildfires tool. because I think, as probably most of the people knows, is the network now we are starting to look into this emergency response platform. And it's not only for wildfires, but it's also for, natural disasters, earthquakes. I say natural and human disasters because actually can be many, but it's more about, yeah, emergency response in general. So I wonder if maybe using the same technology, or I mean satellite information, etc., we could also look into other kind of natural disasters, like yeah, maybe it's like a, I don't know, flood or earthquakes. I have no idea, but it could be very interesting to start thinking about how can we first of all, like, keep using the tool, but secondly also maybe thinking about other kind of emergencies that we could start looking at with these kind of tools. And I don't know if we have a thought of that.
Yeah, I think maybe not exactly the same tool, a similar tool with some variation. I think the first platform, the platform for rapid response, it is able to show almost the same information for other disasters like shelters, food centers, traffic, and that kind of things. I think are useful in all the cases and are very generalizable. Uh, with respect to the specific component adapted to the disaster, I think floods are something that is very explored. So I think it is something where tools are available, and I think now we lack from integration. So I think our tool is perfect for that kind of integrations. Hurricanes is also a thing. It could be possible to adapt for. Not sure about earthquakes, but yeah, definitely flooding and hurricanes are two disasters that could be possibly extended.
Marcus?
Yeah, I have a question for Manuel as well. At a while back, we were trying to use remote sensing tools to map informal areas and not just kind of image based, but actually extract, links, nodes, mobile, like so that we could incorporate, so we could run simulations on them that weren't just raster files. And I'm wondering if you've come across any recent tools that help either understand three-dimensionally spaces. Like it's very hard to map some areas of like desert, informal settlements because they're all the same color almost. Everything's the same color. Or tools that can extract links, nodes, mobility corridors, things like that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the tools that is now super used for these kind of applications is LiDAR, which is this laser
Yeah.
tool that instead of capturing this passive camera, it is releasing laser and measuring how much the laser comes back in the time. Those kind of tools are very useful for 3D mapping. However, current existing satellite tools that use this kind of technology are kind of low resolution. So I think from that perspective, I don't think if there is now a particular tool provider from private sector for high resolution mapping of 3D images. Um, I think drones are a very good solution for that because they
Yeah.
provide very good resolution. But what I've seen is, at least for buildings, some application where using artificial intelligence, they measure the angles of the satellite with respect to the Earth, the zenith,
Shadow.
the zenith of the Earth, and to measure the
Yeah.
so with those components, the angle of the satellite, the angle of the sun, and the shadow extent, you can basically solve a geometric problem very easily to map the extent. However, how extendable is this thing to desert, for example, which is almost the same color in the sand or in the
Yeah.
snow? example.
Yeah, right.
I'm not
So,
very sure. I'm not very sure, but I've seen these kind of tools. Yeah.
okay. We'll have to keep looking out because
Yeah.
it's a challenge, especially in areas that aren't mapped.
Yeah.
Sub-Saharan Africa or, you know, parts of India, parts of South America.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people in anthropology, especially archaeology, I know they use a lot of LiDAR for measuring or creating 3D maps of the structure they found in the above ground.
Wow, okay. Cool. We'll have to come to Harvard and see your lab.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. The Center for Astrophysics, we are very worried about this kind of remote sensing tools. So, yeah,
Very cool. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I think Christine has a question.
No?
No?
Maybe I can I have a last question. So, Manuel, about the emergency response tool for the firefighters. How so? At the end, I guess that you guys managed to send them the tool so they could use it. How was the feedback from them, and how was also like the learning process to use the tool? Like how was that process?
Yeah, the process it was kind of close because it was mostly firefighter friend using the tool. So we were talking by WhatsApp. So it was kind of close. I think the coordination was not effortly in that sense. They wanted to know exactly what was the wildfire extent in order to plan how they are gonna provide resources in the different parts of the wildfire. So I think yeah, it was very useful for them because it was like the first time that we are able to see this in near real time. The platform every overpass was about 2 hours, so they were able to update their belief every 2 hours. Um, it was the first time they did it, so they were very grateful for this tool. We don't know exactly what they do, what they did with this tool, what they really managed to use with the extent of the wildfire, but we knew that it was useful for them. In this sense, yeah, and after that, with the other tool, we receive more feedback with the tool that also has shelters, that also have food centers. We also from people, we receive indeed a lot of feedback from normal people like that wanted to know where to bring food, where to provide support, and yeah, indeed, I think our main learning was first the tools are there. So the hard part is, and the effortly part is to coordinate all these efforts into a joint strategy. And also, they are kind of simple for us that we are in research that we can query some database and take the data and put it available. But indeed, those tools that are not available, that does not exist, are very useful for the people that don't have anything indeed. So yeah, I think that was our main learning. For that it was obvious, but for the people was not obvious, and they were grateful for
Mhm.
having.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Marcela, Manuel, and Francisco, for showing us your work. Congratulations. And yeah, so we will meet again at the end of the month, on the 28th of July. And Gipuzkoa will be presenting, and they will talk about some summit updates. So thank you everyone for coming, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you
Thank
all for your
you.
attention. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.